Welcome back. So now that you have an understanding of Git, we're going to move on to install all of the required software that we need. Now I have a few extra software, but I'm not going to tell you about those. You can go and search about them in your own time because we're not going to really use them in this course. But I'm going to talk to you about the main stuff that we need, the main software, the main systems. So these are the main systems that I'm going to show you right now. First one is Git. Now we're not going to use Git bash. You can if you want to. All we need is a bash shell. We're going to talk about shells and all of that in the terminal section, but you just need kind of a shell or command prompt like this. It's not really a command prompt, but whatever you want to call it. So we need something like this. Now I'm not going to use this one supplied by Git. So when we install Git, we get that. What I'm going to use is the Ubuntu shell for Windows, or the Unix shell for Windows. So I'm going to teach you how to do that in this video. I've just done a little bit of formatting on this. So we need something like this. You can see if I open this one, I'll show you. They look pretty much exactly the same, just a few username changes that I've made myself, but they look almost exactly the same. So we are going to be going forward, and I'm going to teach you how to install this terminal and get used to it. All right, let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is learn how to install Git. So let's go ahead and do that now. First thing I want to do is go ahead and open up Google Chrome or whatever your browser is. And the first thing you want to do is search for Git. So it's going to come up with this. And what you're going to do is just go here, and it should give you this website. I will link the website in the content or the lectures. So I'm going to link it there if you want to, if you don't want to Google search it. So, and it will take you to this page. So what you want to do is go ahead and go to downloads right there. And now you can choose your operating system. If you're using Linux or Unix, sorry, you can go ahead and do that if you're using OS X or Windows, which is the one I'm using. So I'm just going to go into my downloads and open up the Git installer right here. So I'm just going to open that so I can show you how you install it. So you're going to accept any changes that you want to make. And there you go. It's going to give you the setup. So I'm going to go next, and I'm going to run you through this so you know what to do. So right here under additional icons, if you click on the desktop, it's just going to add a desktop icon for the Git bash terminal. So under Windows Explorer integration, this is just your terminals, your GUIs. We talked about Git GUIs here, but we're not going to use the default Git GUI. It's not really user friendly. We're going to use source tree. Talked about that before, but you're just going to install it. If you want, you don't need to. You can install Git bash if you don't want to use the Ubuntu terminal. If you have Windows, if you don't want to use that, you can always install Git bash. And we'll talk about some other alternatives for Windows users. If you're on Mac or Linux, of course, you can just open up terminal. I'm sure you all know what that is. If you don't, just search terminal on Mac, Linux. It's just Command T or Control T, whichever one you're using. So we're going to go ahead and install that. And you're just going to keep all of these on. Of course, keep these last 5 the default. So let's go next. Now you can select the default editor. So Vim is quite an advanced editor. So we're not going to really use the editor for Git, but if you want, you can go ahead and select Notepad++. You do have to have it installed. If you installed it during while the installer was open for Git, just like I did, you're going to have to reopen the installer for Git in order for it to recognize that Notepad++ has been installed. So you can go ahead and do that. If you have Visual Studio, you can use that. I would recommend just going with Notepad++. We're not going to use the editor, but if you ever want to go forward and learn more about this, you can always do that. So I'm just going to click next. And now here is what I was talking about, some of the parts that you may get confused on. So first of all, it says use Git from Git bash only. So this will only take Git commands or only accept them from the Git bash terminal. We don't want that because we want to have a little bit more variety. So when you say use Git from the Windows command prompt, it doesn't mean just from the Windows command prompt. It means from all of the bash terminals, other terminals, including the Windows command prompt and some other terminals or shells such as Windows PowerShell. If you look at it right here, I really like this terminal for Windows. It doesn't have all of the core Unix commands and terminal commands, but I really enjoy it. It's really clean. for Windows users. We're going to go over that later, but for now you just want to select this. And the reason we're not selecting this is because it will override some Windows tools and functions. So we don't want to do that. We want to leave that as it is. We don't want to touch that. So we're going to use Git from the Windows CMD command prompt. And now here is for choosing HTTPS transport backend. So this is pretty much just for authentication, connection to remote servers such as GitHub. We're going to select the OpenSSL library. And now here is something called, check out Windows style commit Unix style line ending. So pretty much this is just a little bit of formatting, conversions between characters and things like that. So we're just going to go with the default here. Check out Windows style, commit Unix style, line endings. This is not really important. It's more for advanced users. So we're just going to leave it like this. And here, configuring the terminal emulator to use with Git Bash. Pretty much what this is going to do is change how Git Bash looks. So MINTTY, this is what defines what Git Bash looks like. It makes it look more like a Unix terminal. Whereas if you select this one, Git Bash, when you open it, will just look like a command prompt. It won't really look anything different. So you're going to select this. We're going to go next. There's a few other things here. Git credential manager is for teams and companies. So you don't really need to worry about that unless you're working in a team or a company. Enable file system caching. We're going to leave that on for performance enhancement. And when you're done with that, you can click install. So we're not going to install it, obviously, because I already have it installed. But if you want to test if your Git is working, all you have to do is open up your Git Bash terminal. Even having a Git Bash terminal is a good sign. You can also even open up any other terminal and you can just go git -- version. And that will give you the version. And if you type this in and it works, don't worry about, this might look scary to you, but don't worry about it. But if it shows that something returns and it's not Git is an unknown command or cmdlet or something like that, then you know that Git has been installed correctly. Okay, so now that we've installed Git Bash, why don't I go ahead and show you how to work and install the Ubuntu terminal, so the one for Windows. Now, if you're using something other than Windows, maybe Mac or Linux, you don't really need to worry about this step because you have a native terminal already installed into your operating system. But if you don't, I'm going to show you how to go through and get this. So you can actually do this by default because what happened is Windows didn't have this native support before. But what happened is Microsoft realized that there's a big demand for developers, developers working with Windows, so they added some Linux features. But it's disabled by default, so you have to go and enable it. So what you want to do is go to your control panel. And then you're going to go to Programs and then turn Windows features on or off. Now it'll bring up this little wizard window here. You're going to scroll all the way to the bottom and look for Windows Subsystem for Linux. You're going to tick this and make sure it's on. So just a warning, when you do this, you will have to restart your computer. So that's just a warning. But in order to install it, you need to restart your computer. So just go ahead and do that after the video has ended, or whenever you want. But in order for this to work, you need to restart your computer. All right, let's go ahead and finish the rest of this. So what you want to do is go to the Microsoft Store. And from here, we're going to download the Unix shell, Unix terminal. So you're going to go into search and you're going to search for Ubuntu. And you're just going to hit search. And, it brings up a little ad here, it shows install and run Linux distribution. So you can see that Windows and Microsoft is really trying to make an effort to advertise these Linux distributions. So you can see a bunch here. There's Debian, Kali. You don't have to know what these means if you're not, into IT and networking. You shouldn't really know what that is. But what you're going to do is just install Ubuntu. So you're just going to download that. And once you're done, you can just go into your search bar and search Ubuntu. And once you open that, it'll open up your terminal. So I already have mine installed, but for you, it'll show some installers. So it's going to say maybe something along the lines of, it's installing, please wait a few minutes. Or if you get a message saying some other error message, such as, Windows subsystem for Linux is not enabled or anything like that, then just go back in time and retrace the steps. But if you're still having problems, ask a question in the Q&As. I'm always available to reply. Might message me personally if I can't reply or if you don't get a reply, but that's besides the point. So if you have problems, just ask questions. But after that, pretty much your bash terminal, your bash shell will be installed. So from here we can do whatever we want. I'm just gonna write a few commands. You're gonna learn most of these in the future videos in section 2. So we're gonna learn how to do all of this later. So I hope you get a little bit excited, making folders, things like this. We're gonna do that in the future section. So there we go. We have all of our software installed, and yeah, so let's move on to starting to get a little bit of knowledge about the terminal so we can start actually using Git in our software. All right, let's move on.